Go ahead and call the meeting to order. As a reminder, please turn your cell phones to silent or turn them off, please. And at this time, we'll go ahead and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Chris, would you take the roll, please?
Councilmember Myers?
Here.
Councilmember Berg?
Here.
Councilmember Rowe?
Here.
Councilmember Stevens?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Dalby?
Here. And is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved. Second.
Okay, take the roll, please, Chris.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes. Okay, and if there's anyone that wants to speak tonight, we have a short agenda with basically one item in general to discuss tonight. Please feel free to fill out a form there on the rail and hand it to one of our staff here, and we'll make sure it gets to the city clerk. And I see we already have 4 here. And at the pleasure of the chair tonight, we'll go ahead and how we'll work this is we'll go ahead and have both presentations. We'll give council an opportunity to ask questions and have discussion. And then at the end of that time, we'll go ahead and call these folks up to address the council then at that time, if that would be okay with everybody. Okay, and at this time, we'll go ahead and have Chris continue on with the agenda then.
Presentation by David Silverio, Director, and Mary Kirk, Assistant Director of Ottumwa Transit on the fixed route system for the Ottumwa Transit System.
Okay, Mr. Silverio, you guys have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor, Council.
Evening.
Good evening.
Evening.
So we just want to tell you all about our transit system. Ottumwa Transit is a small urban transit. The Federal Transit Administration, the FTA, categorizes urban systems by population of the city. Iowa has 7 small urban transit systems in the cities with population under 50,000. All systems are department within their respective city. Ottumwa Transit is one of 7 municipal cities or transits in the state of Iowa. Burlington and West Burlington, Clinton, Fort Dodge, Marshalltown, Mason City, and Muscatine. We all provide service to the general public and people with disabilities. Service provided at Ottumwa Transit, we have 5 fixed route systems. We have the North Route, East Route, South Residential, South Commercial, Airport, Shopping Shuttle 3 times a week. We go to Mondays, we go to Hy-Vee. Wednesdays, we go to Walmart. Thursdays to Hy-Vee. And we alternate between North and South Hy-Vee. And what this is, we pick up residents from South Oak, Camelot, Westgate Towers, and Hillside apartments.
You may notice that behind the routes, there are on requests. When we publish our routes, it's pretty well fixed. We get 5,000 of them. But then we see needs throughout the community. And then we alter the route by making it an on request so that everybody gets serviced wherever they need to go.
We also have a paratransit system, and this is a door-to-door service for people with disabilities. We do shuttles for groups who are low income, elderly, and disabled. And we also do Medicaid and waiver rides. And this is our bus schedule. You can see this is our time.
This is time schedules per route. You can't catch a bus if you don't know where it's at. So that is published and it is enforced. I do spot checks to make sure that it's that way. And that's one of our buses going across the bridge.
I just had to throw those in there. I love those buses. And then this is the map of the routes. And as you can see, our city buses cover the majority of the city. Oops. And then here's our ridership for fiscal year 2018. We had a total of 138,019 passengers. Our airport route being the heaviest route. We do a lot of rides for Job Corps students, Indian Hills students. We take people out to Iowa Works. It's a busy. It's standing room only at times.
We also do the residential facility on that to make sure they've got transportation, get out in the community, and look for work and get jobs.
Organizations that we do business with, whatsoever you do, the Wapello County Veterans Affairs, Indian Hills Community College, American Home Finding, the Foster Grandparent Program, Salvation Army, Crisis Intervention Services, Crisis Center for Women, Milestones, First Resources. We provide rides for Oak Meadows and Hope House, Vista Woods Care Center, the Southern Iowa Mental Health, Ottumwa Regional Health Center, the Ottumwa School District, Housing Authority, Job Corps, Iowa Works, and the residential facility.
That's a fairly extensive list. And how that gets generated. If an organization comes to us and they have a need, we'll fill it. Whatever we have to do, we'll fill it. That's how that list got that big, and it continues to go.
And that's just to name a few. Transit achievements and future goals. In 2013, that's when Dave became transit director. Also, later that year, we were voted most improved transit system by the IODOT and Federal Transit Administration. And this is based upon increased ridership and decrease in operating cost. From that point on until present, we've increased all of our driver safety training. We have a TAPCO course. It's 112 hours of pre-driving skills, classroom orientation, behind the wheel training, and I'm certified to train that class, teach that class. We also do CPR, first aid, and defensive driving, and passenger service and safety basic skills.
Your Honor, may I make a request?
Excuse me?
No, I'm talking to,
You have a question? Councilman?
they're not talking into the mic, and I know of several people at home that wanted to watch this tonight and listen to it.
Is this any better?
Much.
Yeah, you have to talk right into it or it doesn't go out.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for bringing it up. It's kind of useless to give a presentation. Nobody hears it. This is what we have done basically since, I call it, the death of transit in 2011, whatever you want to call it. We have rebuilt to the point where we are totally transparent. We are in total compliance with every DOT and FTA regulation. We are training, if not overtraining, our drivers to help reduce our insurance costs and to make it safer for people in the field. We've tried to increase our full-time drivers. It's been difficult with a number of factors, but my dream has always been to make Ottumwa Transit all full-time, where you can hire young people and they can make a career out of this. You get career drivers, you get better service and happier customers and more safety. In 2014, I started a pilot program of buying one small light-duty bus to see just how well it did function, and it worked out great. Nobody hasn't heard the thing they're running around half empty. I won't argue with that. We have some routes that are full, some just a few hours in the day. But as you'll see as we go farther, we're buying more smaller buses. And next year we'll be buying even more. We're finally getting that opportunity. And you're going to see smaller buses on the routes that are real heavy a couple hours in the morning. We're going to run a couple small buses and then we're going to park them. By this time next year, we should only have one or two big buses left, and I'm hoping we just use them as backup. Okay, this is a perfect example of what we have been doing. We haven't been just sitting there letting the buses go round and round. We have attempted to be better and better every day. Mary, I hope one day to take over as transit director. So I directed her to start training. And this is what she's accomplished. I would be willing to bet there's not many other assistant directors or even directors out there that have all the certifications. So we know how to do it right, and we're doing it right. And we will continue that way. Okay. One of the big things, and we can thank Mary for that, she pushed it, we went for it, was we worked with Terry Bradley, and we instituted free rides for vets. I myself am a vet, and I know when I was in, my wife was also in because she lived it too. So we've been offering free rides for the vets and their immediate families. I think that's the least we can do for what they've done for us. And it's been well received, and it's given us some ridership we didn't have before. Now, when I say free, let me explain something. I don't get paid today, but my federal and state dollars are figured on ridership and operating expense. So that free ride actually works out to about $4.39 in 2 years. So there is a method behind my madness. As far as vehicles, 2017, we purchased a new minivan. 2018, we went with a $3 pass. A lot of people can't afford that $1.50 every time or the pass or the ticket. So if you get in and you give us $3, you can ride anywhere you want to all day on that pass. That also has helped us increase our ridership and made a lot of people happy. 2019, we purchased 2 light-duty buses and 2 minivans. Last year, we put our own gasoline fuel tank on site because we're converting to gas. We found that diesel was just too expensive to run. We've been doing logistic care for about 30 days. We signed and got the final training for access to care. These are cash cows. This is how we are hoping to reduce our need for tax levy. We haven't done this before because, about the time I started as director, and I can show you the letter, DHS telling us we could not do these rides because we were a small urban, you had to be a rural. Now they're saying it's fine. So we're going for it. You were kind enough to give me 2 full-time drivers probably about a month ago. I'm working them to death. And access to care starting on, I may need to approach you for another full-time driver to work them to death. But these people are making money and reducing our needs. Goals, as I just stated, decreasing that tax levy. I'm quite cognizant of the fact that our tax levy is high. It was explained to me by Bob J. that the reason that was done was because all 9 of the buses that we had were bought at the same time. So they were going to have to be replaced at the same time. So we built a a very healthy fund balance through that and through some hard work and cost cutting. That's how we bought a van and a bus. We paid cash for them. We had the need. We had to do something. That's what we did. Next year, we're going to get buses. After that, we don't have that need for those big purchases. And we firmly intend to work on lowering that tax levy. We're going to decrease, we would like to decrease the cost of fares. Once again, we are not going to need all that money. Mary and I have been kicking this around for 6 months. Will reducing the fares increase ridership? After seeing what the $3 all-day pass did, I think we both agree it would. We were hoping to institute that the first of this year, but with the current situation, we thought we'd be better off to stop and see how everything shake out before we make any other drastic changes. I don't call it drastic, I think it's great. All this will lead to increased ridership and increased revenue. Then we don't need to come to you with our handout. And that's what we want to do. And we firmly believe that we can do that. Make some serious holes in that. Strategic plan. I would love to expand service. With the Affordable Health Care Act, it has restricted the hours that we do, that we can do. but with your generosity and allowing me to get more full-time people, that's now a dream again. And I think it's going to reality. We've already talked about a few things since that's happened. We would like to go back to open on Saturdays. It was a money loser the way it was set up, but I have looked at that over 7 years. I believe that one of the key factors in that Saturday was left out.
And the public's been asking for it.
Public's been asking for it. I call it the halfway house, the residential facility. If you go through there on a Saturday, there's a string of people walking to the store. I believe Saturday service, there'd be a good ridership, and there wasn't before. It was dead. But we've looked at what we did then, what we've got now, and I think by working smarter and harder, we can make that a success and increase our ridership. It's all about ridership, period. And I'm going to say after customer service. We care about our people. The first decision we make. Is it good for them? We want to create more full-time drivers. As I've explained, we get more full-time people. We make this a job that is with benefits, and then it helps one of the problems we have, and that's hiring. Because we're at low wages, low hours, people can't survive on that. Strategic plan. Oh, we just did that.
So we're
Oh,
want to be
and
open
then-
on holidays for
yeah.
people who need to go to the doctor, doctor's appointments, dialysis. We can have people volunteer to come in on those holidays to transport those people that need to go to these appointments.
We've got a young gentleman that we're starting tomorrow. If he's listening, this is a surprise to him, but it won't be tomorrow. This is one of the things we're going to ask him to do, to be available for those holidays. This came to head since we started access to care, we missed the fact that there's people doing dialysis on Saturdays. And that's not a choice, that's a have to. So we're still working on those aspects, but we will handle it and it will happen. Okay, these are our people. I'm basically the youngster. I've been there 8 years. 1 year as a ops manager, then director. Mary has worked for the city for 20 and a half years. 7.5 with transit, 13 with recycling. We've got one full-time mechanic who's been with the city 23 years. We got 7 full-time drivers. And there's how long they've been there, 27 years, 12 years, down to 2 years. We got 9 part-time drivers, 1 to 9 years, part-time bus washer, and 2 part-time dispatchers, 22 employees. These are people, most of them, that have counted on the city for employment and return have stayed with it. They're also all union members. This is the new buses we're talking about. They are 178-inch, 16 passenger, compared to a 35-foot, 32-passenger bus with a big diesel motor. They're quite comfortable. We've taken care of some of the aspects that the passengers need here in town. One of them's a ramp. We don't want old people in town. It's hard for them to get the bus if it doesn't. Inside the buses we have now, you'll see this other yellow strip. There's a step there. We never imagined that would be a problem, or if they did when they bought them, it is. So we found a bus where there's a ramp there also. It's more spacious inside. It could easily be a 20-passenger bus. It's more spacious inside. It's a lot more comfortable. So we're giving them a lot more bang for the buck they had. And this, we've got 2 of these now. Next year, we get 5 more. So you're going to see a smaller, fresher looking fleet out there.
And that's what they look like.
That's what they look like. Okay. As you'll notice, as the buses have now, we have bike racks on all the buses, and they've been quite well received. There's our 2020 fleet. Those 9 medium-duty buses, one of those is already going to go. 5 more of them will go next year. We'll have the 3 light-duty we have now, 5 ADA minivans. That's what we're going to purchase, 5 of those buses you just saw. Now, do you have the dollar value on that later, don't you? Okay. That's what those buses cost. That's the total we're going to have to pay. But, here's the but. They reimburse us at 85%. So we're only going to have to spend just short of $100,000 to get 5 buses. And then really, to replace the other 2, I may not be in that big of a hurry. But if they are, it's still going to be at a 85%. So that big fund balance I'm sitting on, which I've used some anyway to just straight purchase, I won't need it. I don't need to be sitting on $800,000 or $600,000. I don't need it. I won't need it. So we're going to take that into factor, look at the budgets, which we tighten down every year, and hope to be able to come back every year to this council and tell you, we would like you to lower our tax levy. We don't need your money, thank you. Okay? That's going to be a big saver. These Duramax diesels have 8R, they've been a difficulty. So we're going back to what 1015 tried and true. When I ran it, I became very happy with them. E450 V10 Ford. They are virtually bulletproof and low maintenance. So that expense is going to go away. And once again, there's an opportunity that I don't need your money. That was our operating expenses for 2018.
This is just an itemized list of our income. I got this from my QuickBooks. It's our bus pass money, bus service, our fare box income, paratransit, shopping shuttle, token income, and then you can see our FTA and STA operating income as well.
Here's the downside if you make a decision to go at 1015, which is well, and I'm not even questioning your authority to do that. But I want you to understand these things. You are going to pay unemployment for 22 people for 2 years. I went to their website and roughly figured what that's going to cost. And it's going to cost $150,000 a year, provided nobody gets a job, okay? These are people with families and little kids. They're going to lose their job. They're going to lose their insurance. And they have trusted this city to back them. What message does this send to the rest of the city employees? Federal funds received. The building down there was built in 3 sections. It was like a jigsaw puzzle. Any undepreciated funds that are left over, if you abandon that building, must be repaid to the federal government. How that will work, they will come in. We've done this with the shelter downtown. So you're going to have to have a appraisal. They're going to decide what you're going to do, and they usually come back with standard depreciation. So that's the kind of check you're going to write to the federal government. And you're going to have an abandoned building down there, which you could do something with, but that's an immediate downside. That will happen real quick. And on maybe a smaller note, if we want to talk about figures and call $47,000 small, not to me, That is what we pay the city every year to do all of our bookwork. And one thing, and then I'm going to back out of here, that we need to understand, we get a tax levy, but not a dime of money spent at transit for anything comes out of the general fund. It's done by that graph, state, federal, and tax levy. But not a dime comes out of your general fund. So, Mary, do you have anything? Thank you very much. I appreciate this opportunity. Do you have any questions now, or did you want to wait till it's all over? Or?
Questions, comments by the council. We'll give everybody at least one round of questions, and then we'll come back for more if there is more. And we'll start down here at Councilmember Burke.
Thank you for all that information. Not to put you on the spot with math, but I know it was about 18,000 rides you thought weren't getting received because they were being taken by 1015 or further transit, correct? Was that? That
is what I was told by their director in the meeting we had where we settled all of this. He shook my hand, walked away, and then did this instead. But that's what he stated, 18,000 riders, because when this is over, provided we're still here, the DOT is going to have to enforce the federal regulation that he can't operate in the city of Ottumwa. So I will be getting all the rides in the city.
I was just curious if you had an idea of what, I mean, obviously you can calculate per ride those dollar amounts, but obviously 18,000 would raise your ridership for your grants. So I was just curious if you had an idea what kind of, how much you thought that would equate to.
$4.39 a ride at the current FTA reimbursement rate.
I'll get my calculator out. Thanks. Thank you.
I just have a couple questions for you. You had mentioned the reimbursement rate on the new buses would be at about 85%. Right. Is there a time commitment to that grant?
No, that's how that works. The buses are all on a huge list, PTMS list, and they're all graded and given a number, 47.5 to 200. And every year, whatever federal money comes in, they start at the top of that list, the oldest buses, and work down. So you never know from year to year if you're going to get to replace a bus or not. This year, out of the 9 buses we have, well, 8 after that, 5 of them hit that list. So there's never an end to this cycle. It's a continuing pushes the new buses from the bottom up on the list and the oldest buses being taken off.
So and maybe I'm just confused here, is that on the same type of grant that these federal funds are? Or are those two completely different things?
They're two completely different things.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah, they're two. One has nothing to do with the other.
Okay. So if you're looking at this depreciation schedule that you have here, how many years does that equate to that we have before this $148,000, for example, is not an obligation to the city of Ottumwa any longer?
It didn't get put up there, and it probably should have, but a building that is built with federal money is considered 32 years.
Okay. And the last question that I guess I have for right now, you mentioned that you have 22 employees as far as heads go. How many, what's the FTE count on that?
How many what, sir?
Full-time equivalents.
That'd be 10.
10. Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, Councilmember Myers or Skip?
Yeah, well, thank you, because it's very informative. I had a lot of questions formed, but I wasn't aware of how you do your operations, and I was very impressed with your presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mary, I think to you, early you had a chart up there of 2018 ridership, and I know you haven't had time to accumulate all the 2019, but maybe like January through maybe October, did it look this year like your ridership was maintaining?
It's maintaining, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thanks.
I have a question that a couple people asked me just today. Do students pay to ride the bus to school?
No, sir. That has been a council decision. I came in front of the council probably 5 years ago and suggested maybe a 50-cent fee or something. And the council at that time decided, no, they didn't want to do it. They want those kids to ride free.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
I had a quick question, David and Mary. Thanks for the presentation. That answered a lot of questions I already had that I don't need to ask. But in the past, have there been routes or services that we decided not to do because they were not cost effective, putting people without service? And has that changed, or have there been routes that we've experimented with that haven't worked? And what have you found to be, something that we may have not done and we've gone back to that now have made, like Saturday service has been something that you might want to retry or restart to give you the edge or competitive edge now that we might want to look at again?
Right. That's an ongoing thing with us, particularly with me. I spend a lot of time planning for the future. When you plan for the future, then you find out what it's going to cost you if you have the ability now, or approximately when you can do it. We have made some attempts. Some of them were huge failures that we thought would work, but we tried. One of the things that we did as far as a route, and you may hear from your people, out at Good Sam, we don't go down Skyline Drive. We tried it because a gentleman from Good Sam came when we used to have our transit committee, said they needed it, so I gave it to them. And we got little to no ridership. As you probably know, depending upon the area in town, depends if these people are going to drive or ride the bus. We found that the area around Skyline Drive, down Chester, are a working class people that drive. Well, as you know, my daughter lives there. Mm-hmm. So yes, we do, and we continually do. The drawback we've had is the ability to hire people. And the mayor and Jody Keith and ourselves had a meeting earlier in the year, and we do have a plan that we will come to council with to increase their pay. But I'm not going to come to you until I can pay for it. I'm going to ask you for another dime. If we can pay for it, just like the full-time people, and they still show a profit, then I'll come to you, explain the deal. But until that time, I can't do anything that's not cost effective.
The two things that are most concerning to me, not concerning, but of utmost importance, and I think to the council too, when it comes to our levies is, and you stated it too, you're fully aware, and we all are, we're one of the highest tax counties in the state of Iowa. And that's not due to the transit levy by any means or stretch of the imagination. We got a trust and agency levy that, compared to a lot of other counties in Iowa, was way, way high. So we're not trying to just come and look at transit and the transit levy, but number one for me important is service to our customers. And I know that you and Mary take that very serious. Number two is trying to be as efficient we can with the tax, levies that we have and keep them trending at least, in the right direction. And so, reducing that, any way we can is always a plus. And so I appreciate your presentation, hearing some of those news that may be trending down. Is there any, and it's still premature with, Logistic Care coming on board and some of those things you mentioned. Do you have any kind of time frame or maybe even a guess, is it a year long? You had goals up there. Are you thinking a year to 2 years maybe that we can start seeing maybe some of that trend down? Have you done any financial projections on when we might be able to see a few cents fall off that levy?
Okay.
Nothing in stone, but maybe, not talk numbers, but just maybe a year we may see some of that.
I can talk numbers. I've already made an offer to reduce it to 6.5%, which would reduce my tax levy by over $100,000. We think with the new buses coming in, the maintenance costs, access to care, logistic care money, we run a tight ship down there, but trust me, we can tighten it up some more. And we understand that until we get the paying deals working better and more money, that this is going to have to come out of our fund balance. Sure. We've got a good fund balance. We can play for a year or two, maybe ask again at that time, we're hoping to, or realize that we're in trouble and we'll come to you and lay our hats on the table and go, you know what? We can't do it, but we can do it. We can do any damn thing we want to down there, and we've proved it. Year one, best transit agency for the federal government out of Kansas City. Took us a year to do that. And we're still hitting it. Thank you.
You bet. Appreciate your motivation. Good work. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it very much. Okay, move on.
Discussion of offer made by Jay Allison of 1015 Transit to take over the operation of Ottumwa Transit.
If it would please the council, I'd like to maybe start with how we got to this point tonight.
Absolutely.
We received a letter from the Iowa DOT, and on November 6th of this past year, Joni Keith and I and Councilman Delby met with the DOT and 1015 and the Ottumwa Transit at the regional planning office. The person that's in charge of the local, compliance of the bus service met with us and asked that we work together to come up with a non-duplicative approach. And so we had some discussion, and I thought it was a good meeting that morning, and we did talk about some options. That was November 6th. Then on November 14th, I received from Jay Ellison, the director of the 1015 Transit, a letter that I shared with council and asked that you take a look at it and give us some feedback. Then in December, I also met with the transit employees, and there were a lot of rumors floating around that we had already made a decision. I assured them that, as I did to Jay in the meeting I had with him, that we would not make a decision until you'd had a presentation from the transit authority and got a chance to really dive into this and decide what you wanted to do. So we asked for the presentation night, and I think they did a nice job. What I'd like to suggest is that we hear from people who are here. And as I said to the employees at the transit, we are not planning to make any decision tonight. We are simply gathering information, and that we would make a recommendation, the staff would make a recommendation to the council at the next regular council meeting, which would be Tuesday, January 21st. So with that, if you have some questions, I'd be glad to respond to them. Otherwise, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Administrator Lazio. Any questions for Administrator Lazio about that issue? Okay, then I'd go ahead and hand the floor over to Mr. Jay Allison, the Director of 1015 Transit. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, Council and Mayor. You know, as we just heard, this has come up as a result of trying to put together this memorandum of understanding. 1015 Transit has had the opportunity over the last 5 years to provide demand response door-to-door service for the residents of Ottumwa. In fiscal year 15, we provided 7,500 rides. In fiscal year 17, we provided 7,400 rides. Fiscal year 17, we provided 7,700 rides. But we kept hearing more services were needed. We started advertising on TV and radio, investing over $20,000 to improve the transportation in Ottumwa. In fiscal year 18, we had over 12,000 rides. Fiscal year 19, over 18,000 rides. In the first 6 months of fiscal year 20, we're over 11,000 rides. These are rides to work at 5 a.m. to keep people off unemployment that have no vehicle, or dialysis at 4:30 a.m. for life-sustaining medical treatment, weekends, holidays, and thousands of more. In fiscal year 18, we operated 326 days, included 44 Saturdays, 24 Sundays, 9 holidays, We currently operate with 4 full-time dispatchers, 4 phone lines plus 2 rollovers, potentially up to 6 lines on a normal day. And we use around 8 to 12 drivers in the city limits of Ottumwa. Over the last couple months, Ottumwa Transit has been receiving, as we heard from Dave, the insurance trips inside of Ottumwa that 1015 used to provide. We completely understand that initiative is our prerogative. After meeting with Dave to discuss how we can satisfy the memorandum of understanding the Iowa DOT needs for 2 public transit systems to operate in the same area, became clear to us that we were at an impasse. In that meeting, 1015 Transit offered Ottumwa Transit all the nursing homes and assisted living transportation that we're currently doing in Ottumwa. That represents about 8 or 9 facilities. And we were told they were not interested. So I just asked what they wanted. The only thing they were interested in was the insurance trips in Ottumwa and a 2-block buffer of the fixed route bus system. They did not want the early morning trips, weekend trips, or holiday trips because the city council told him he needed to provide a dispatcher during those times the vehicles were in operation. However, I'm saddened to inform you a standing order trip was removed from the 1015 Transit portal and given to Ottumwa Transit, only to be turned back on New Year's Day because it was a holiday, leaving a disabled Ottumwa resident in a wheelchair without a ride to her life-sustaining dialysis, which is a violation of the Medicaid contract. However, 1015 Transit can only provide the low-cost and no-cost service with these insurance trips. It's the only way we can make it happen. For example, when Ragbri come through Ottumwa, we provided over 7,000 free rides utilizing 5 routes with about 16 drivers. It started at 10 a.m. and we continue to provide low-cost everyday rides to all citizens in Ottumwa. Our proposal created by the 1015 board will allow 1015 Transit to continue offering outstanding service by merging the fixed route and ADA paratransit at a lower cost in conjunction with door-to-door demand response. This will help as many residents of Ottumwa as possible, including those with disabilities, get where they need to go using public transportation. 1015 Transit believes it can provide a higher level of service by also potentially saving taxpayer dollars. This will also provide a greater flexibility of service to the residents of Ottumwa, and there will be no reduction in services provided by 1015 Transit. I would be remiss if I did not remind everyone, 1015 Transit is a company they are today because of instructions received when we separated from the city January 1, 2014. I sought clarification from Dave as to our boundaries and how we should operate. Since we had operated together since July 1st, 1992, Dave said, do all the rides you can provide. That is why we've worked so hard in Ottumwa in honoring that request. I would like to thank Ottumwa Transit and the city of Ottumwa for your time and your consideration. The proposal we have is to provide all transportation in the city of Ottumwa, starting July 1st, 2020. As we've heard, there might be some details that need to be worked through because there are certain life expectancies on anything that has federal money attached to that. And I believe all of you are smart enough to know that. But simply, we're not asking for properties, but we'll work through whatever's needed to satisfy anybody's requirements. We're not asking for your tools. We know the employees are city employees, and we know that they can be moved to other departments that need employees. But if any of those employees are interested, they're welcome to apply at 1015 Transit. They will find our pay scale might be a little bit more than they're currently paid. The only thing that we're looking for would be the vehicle fleet, of course, to run the transportation that is needed. We would not have the current fleet, and the vehicle lift. The lift they have there is bigger than ours for the bigger buses. And I know they're in the move to move those down to medium or to light duty. So starting right off, we'd lower all the rates. Paratransit would go to $2, fixed route to $1. General would go to $25 unlimited for the month, elderly to $20, college to $15. The tax levy, we've heard a lot about that tonight. I know that's a source of interest when you have to look at raising taxes. We set it in there for 3 years, but my board did say it's very negotiable. And I don't know what that means to them, but very negotiable. If the tax levy becomes very critical in your consideration, they would like to listen to what you would like to offer concerning the tax levy. The initial proposal was just 3 years. After that, there would be no more financial responsibility. 1015 Transit would absorb all of that. We'd be able to provide more services for holidays, typically closed by Ottumwa Transit that we currently do. We did want to add that we would continue all current services that we've heard about tonight. The thing you've got to understand, we're not looking to discontinue any services. We'd continue all services, even as we heard, free rides to veterans, whatever they're currently doing will be maintained. If you approve this offer, 1015 will also make a push forward that would offer employment with full-time benefits, including insurance. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ellison. Is there any questions, comments from the council members on this proposal?
I just have one.
Sure, Councilmember Rowe.
Specific to these ridership numbers that you have, and just for clarification here, I'm sure I'm reading this right, but I just want to be certain. I know that 1015 provides service to other areas outside of Ottumwa. Are these numbers specific to Ottumwa city limits?
These numbers are only door-to-door transportation in the city limits of Ottumwa.
Okay, thank you.
And as you heard, as Dave mentioned, I'll just reinforce it. If the proposal is denied and you continue like you are, we understand that we will back out of Ottumwa starting March 1st. So those 11,000 plus rides in the first 6 months will become Ottumwa Transit's concern, and we understand that.
Okay, Councilmember Myers.
Yeah, just to be clear, if Mr. Allison, and you, I think, just answered it for me, but you stated earlier that Mr. Silverio had mentioned that 1015 could take all the riders that you were available or whatever. But Mayor, City Administrator Lazio, it is clear though that DOT is saying one or the other, but not both.
That was my understanding of the meeting I sat in. They want a memorandum of understanding between the two organizations, and they don't want a duplication of two services competing. And I think there's also a further question about providing ride on demand when you have taxi services in the community.
Okay, thank you.
I just have something to clear up. You mentioned the employees can transfer to other jobs within the city. Employees plural, you said. Is this what you're thinking?
Our common thought was because they're all city employees, if you need those employees in other city departments, they would have the potential to move into vacant department openings. But if they have no job, they are welcome to put an application in with us.
Okay. You said move into where we might have an opening. Yeah, rather than bump, okay. That clears it up for me. Thank you.
Any other questions by the council? Holly, go ahead.
I know obviously you said that if this was going to move forward, there'd be more details to work out. But I guess one of my biggest concerns is knowing ensuring that, you take it on and take on the routes as they are now, how we would ensure that that would continue in the future. If it's out of the city's hands and the city's decisions, what would be there to say that you could cancel that in the future or, that type of thing.
If you've driven down Madison lately, you will understand our passion for transit. We have purchased a property. We have constructed 2 buildings. Last year, we put up a 60 by 150. This year, we put up a 40 by 140. Last year, the building has a manual bus wash system. The current building we're working on will have an automatic car wash for the small vehicles. If you was to ask any of my employees that work for 1015 what our thoughts are on rides, and some of them are here, if somebody calls and they need a ride, what the answer is going to be, it's always yes. We've worked very diligently, very hard, and I can tell you that stretches us beyond the limits someday because we cover 10 counties here in southeast Iowa. So we move our drivers wherever they're needed. We'll have drivers tomorrow that'll be working at least one county away to cover the workload there. If we take this on, we're prepared to hire as many drivers as we need. We've estimated it'll take 10, but we're ready to hire more if we need to. I don't like going backwards. Thank you.
Councilmember Rowe, did you have one more question?
Yeah, I do. Speaking of going backwards, let's make the assumption based on what you said towards the end that the council decides not to move away from the Ottumwa Transit Authority. Do you estimate that you're going to lose employees or you'll just shift them around to other areas?
We estimate with our workload in our various counties that we will do a hiring freeze for the time being, maintain our employees, let the dust settle, and possibly shift some around to the various counties.
So you have no exposure for unemployment then if this doesn't go to your favor?
No.
Okay.
That is not our plan.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I guess I would like a follow-up because I think Holly hit on this a little bit. But so we had the Ottumwa Transit presentation, pretty definitive about things, but questions like, well, how do you replace buses? And so could we see a little better plan of,
you sure could,
of how all of that is?
I've currently got about 70 vehicles in our fleet. When we took over the fleet in 14, when we left the city, I would have to look at those numbers. I'm guessing we probably had somewhere in the 20s, maybe close to 30, and that might be a stretch. In the number of years that I have ran 1015, we have more than doubled our fleet size. We run some drivers with dual vehicles. In other words, if I have a driver in a county that needs a bus on 2 days a week, but the other 3 days they're taking a trip to Iowa City or Des Moines, that employee also has a vehicle. Again, it's all about the numbers. And if I'm running a trip to Des Moines, I'd rather run it in a vehicle for 30 miles to the gallon versus 6. So we have several drivers have 2 vehicles at their use. With that being said, I can't get vehicles fast enough. As you've heard from Dave, it's a very slow process with the state. So we've bought a lot of vehicles out of pocket. I can tell you tomorrow, I'm struggling for vehicles. For minivans, actually, are the hardest for me to get. They're about 55,000 roughly. If you buy them out of pocket, and that hurts. But we had to move a driver to another county to pick up a vehicle because the employee's off for a couple of days. I've got a couple of vehicles we're putting motors in. We have a full service. We do everything. We outsource very little when it comes to mechanic. We do our own transmissions, our motors. We have all kinds of equipment. My mechanic is here and he can testify. We know it's better if we keep it in-house. Controls better. And we just work very hard at everything we do. We try to excel in.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Rowe, another question.
Sorry, one more.
You're fine.
You said your fleet's at about 70 vehicles. You have 8 to 12 drivers running in Ottumwa. What's the actual average that you have running in the city of Ottumwa? Is it 10? Is it 9? And of that, sorry, I'm going to ask a two-part question here. Of those vehicles, you mentioned some of those are minivans, I'm assuming. So what's the actual bus and minivan count that you normally have running in Ottumwa?
I can answer probably that. Our percentage of ratio right now in our fleet is probably a third buses, a third wheelchair minivans, and a third SUVs or sedans.
Okay.
So we have several SUVs, again, because I can pick those up for about 20,000 versus 55. So we're about a third roughly. Speaking to the number of operations managers here. The other question is very hard for us to answer without going into our software, because you've got to understand we're moving people in and out of Ottumwa all the time. So our benefit is we might have 9 people that need a ride at 7:30 in the morning. There's no way on earth I can pull that off with Ottumwa drivers. But we have somebody coming into Ottumwa from a various county. Somebody's bringing somebody up to dialysis from Bloomfield. We pick her up at 5:30 in the morning. So then we can work that driver here in Ottumwa while he's waiting on that dialysis patient. Again, it's a program, and we work to fit that in. It's like a hand in glove. And so I was guessing just in Ottumwa alone, we probably had anywhere from 8 to 12. That number could be low some days. Because the question I asked him, I didn't have time to get answered, was what's that real number look like? If I was to strip every Ottumwa trip off of every county driver and try to put them on just Ottumwa drivers, I don't know what that would look like. Our average trip starts about 4 a.m., 4:30 is when we start running. Unless we have to go out of town, sometimes we have to pick people up going to the doctor for surgery. That could be 3 a.m. But our normal starts about 4:30 a.m. Our phones start about 5, I'll be honest with you. Our office don't open until 8. We start taking calls about 6 a.m. I hope that don't get out there. We do answer the phone, and we take those calls because, we try to help people. But yeah, calls start, and those lines are all day.
Well, it got out there because you're on TV. So just so you know, thank you.
Oh, boy.
That's all right. Is there any more questions, comments for Mr. Allison? Well, I want to thank you very much and your board very much for taking the time to make this proposal. It's not an easy sell, and it's not an easy thing to propose. So thank you again. And like I said, we've got it slated for for legislative action in the next week. So
thank you.
We'll be hearing. Thank you. Okay, at this time, we'll go ahead and call up the folks who wish to address the council on tonight's items. And so first up will be Mr. Terry Bradley. Step on up, sir, to the microphone. And again, please state your name, an address if you would like, and you're free to have the floor.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Terry Bradley. I'm the Director of Wapello County Veteran Affairs. I would like to speak on behalf of the Ottumwa Transit Authority. They do a very, very good job for our veterans, and that entails about 10% of the county population that they take care of with their buses. Not all my veterans ride their bus, but the ones that need it to get out to the clinic, to get to dialysis, the paratransit will stop, pick them up, take them to their appointments, pick them up, take them home. Now, The only downside I see it's not concerning them, it's concerning 1015 Transit. I had a veteran that needed to go to Iowa City for an appointment. It cost my office $1.65 a mile round trip. Now, if they have somebody already going, they will give me either a discount or they'll take the veteran for free. But that's not good service. I understand that they're in business and they need to make money. But $1.65 a mile? That's a little pricey if you ask me. And if they said that they will continue to give the same service that 1015 or the Ottumwa Transit does for our veterans, how long is that going to last? I don't think this is a good idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay, next up, Terry Shaw. Good evening, and please step to the microphone and state your name, address, and you have the floor.
Terry Shaw, 118 South Union Street. It's the Hillside Apartments.
Sure.
At one time, I decided to tie the 1015 Transit, and I ran into a major problem. I was scheduled to be at the hospital at 5 in the morning. I was to have a 4:30 pickup. No driver showed, so I had to call a taxi in order to get to the hospital on time. When I finally got through to the office of the 1015 Transit, they said somebody forgot to put me in the computer, which was not making me very happy because I had to be there for my knee surgery for knee replacement. And I had to pay $20 in order to get to the hospital from where I was at Hillside. And that was using a Ottumwa cab at that time. And another time I wanted to use them, they booked me only one way, and they did not book my return when I said I needed to be picked up and brought back after I did my shopping trip at Walmart. And I was left there, and I ended up having to call a taxi again. So I quit using the 1015 and went totally over to Ottumwa Transit. And Ottumwa Transit, I have never had a problem. They have always picked me up when I needed to pick up. And if I call and say I'm ready to return, I usually have a driver there within 15 to 20 minutes to get me home. So I would love to see Ottumwa Transit continue. And my concern is if 1015 did away with the fixed routes as they are now, say I woke up in the morning and I needed to go see my doctor. I can get there on Ottumwa Transit. There is no guarantee with 1015 I would be able to get there that same day. And I would have to, again, call a cab and spend way more money. And thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Doris Witten. Good evening, Doris. You have the floor.
I'm short.
That's fine, so am I.
Thank you for calling my name. First of all, I want to say that the Ottumwa Transit Company has rescued me from when I wasn't picked up from 1015. They took me to my destination, and they didn't put down that I had to go home. And I was at Walmart. So I said, "You want me to walk over to Schaefer Stadium?" Then I called Ottumwa Transit, and Mary, bless her heart, she picked me up. And that was the first time I met her. I was so glad to see her, I didn't know what to do with myself. But one time before that, I had called 1015 to take me to a doctor. The driver asked me how much tip I was going to give him. I looked at him like he was kind of an animal. I didn't say a word. I just sat down. He did not get a tip. If I would have given him a tip, then The last time I was on one of their buses, I figured I would have a funeral of myself in 3 days. We were going down the road, the light was yellow, the bus went through it, and I looked up and there's a big truck coming right at me. He just went on through the red light like it was not even anything to worry about. That was the last time I was on one of their buses. But I see one of their buses about every 3 days parked on my street in front of an apartment building, and everybody on my street has at least one car. Nobody calls a bus but me. But he sits there for about 20 minutes and then he drives off. So I guess it must be his little break time, I don't know. But he should be back taking care of calls because it's hard to get a hold of them. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is Mary Margaret Butler. Good evening, Mary. You have the floor.
My name is Mary Margaret Butler. I am the director of Whatsoever You Do, WYD Inc. here in Ottumwa. We are a nonprofit that helps the less fortunate in our community. We have been doing this for 8 years, and I would like to speak on behalf of the Ottumwa Transit and for all the help that they have given us in this past 8 years. I deal on a daily basis with homeless people. I deal with people that have lost their jobs, that have no money. I deal with people that are sick or can't get somewhere. They don't have the money to get there. I get calls, all types of calls. And all I have to do is call Mary over the Ottumwa Transit, and she provides me with passes, bus tokens. And whenever I feel they trust me enough to know that whenever I feel someone actually could use or take advantage of this, they let me give these to these people. And I cannot tell you the people that have appreciated what they have done for these people. I had a couple months ago, a couple that came in that was homeless, excuse me, and they were walking all across town trying to find a place to go to get the different things that they needed. They were trying to get to Des Moines, and they were in really bad shape, and they came into the place where I work. I also have another full-time job, and I reached in my pocket because Mary had given me some passes, and I handed it to him, and the lady broke down and started crying because it was a shock to her that she was going to be able to take that bus pass and go for a month, be able to get the places that she needs. And it wasn't but a week later, they were able to get the things they needed to do to get to Des Moines so that they could get to a place where they could get some help. As you know, this is not a good town to be homeless in. So I just would like to get up here and tell people and let everybody know and to thank the Ottumwa Transit for all that they have done for Whatsoever You Do. And I would like to speak for all the people that are less fortunate that have been able to been helped by what they have done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary Margaret. Okay, next up is Heather Jones. Okay, good evening, Heather. You have the floor.
My son works at Tenco. He has an intellectual disability. 1015 picks him up among a lot of other employees at Tenco. They do door-to-door service. So I know that my son's going to be picked up at 7:45 every day. I know he's going to be dropped back off between 3:30 and 3:45 every day. When they started doing the waivers, I was offered the opportunity to go with the Ottumwa Transit. They were going to give him a token. He would have to walk down to North Hy-Vee to catch the bus. He doesn't have the ability to do that. So I'm pretty sure a lot of the other riders on those buses do not have the ability to do that. It would be a big deficit for people that are using the door-to-door service to not have that anymore. And I also volunteer for the Red Cross. We opened a warming shelter last year. 1015 picked people up all around town, brought them to the warming shelter for free. I just wanted to let you guys know that human error does happen. I'm sorry that people have missed their rides, but 1015 has been a blessing too. That's all.
Thank you very much, Heather. Appreciate that. Okay, and finally, Mr. Robert Lapointe. Good evening, Robert.
Good evening.
You have the floor.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you.
My name is Robert Lapointe, 525 Ray Street. Most of my concerns have been addressed through the presentations. To start off with, I am a supporter of Ottumwa Transit, and I would hate to see Ottumwa Transit be absorbed by 1015. With that being said, I was hoping that our city attorney was going to be here tonight. I don't see her here. I would like the council to address a question that I do have for the city attorney. That question being, I would like to know if the council is wanting to, I want to make sure that I get this out there the correct way. I have talked to the mayor and our mayor pro tem about an issue that has come up. There is another entity that would like to be in the running if the council would like to not be running Ottumwa Transit anymore. That entity would like to present a proposal to take over Ottumwa Transit. So I'd like to make the council aware that entity is the firm that runs our city's school bus service. So to make that aware to the council, that firm would like to present a proposal. So they would like for you guys to hold off on making any decision on the 1015 proposal until they can present you guys with a proposal of their own. And the question for the city attorney is, do you have to put that out to a bid proposal? For example, like you do with Bridgeview, on who runs Bridgeview, or what have you. I just like to throw that out there. And that's what I'd like to bring to your attention. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Appreciate that comment too. Mr. Silverio, you're free to have the floor.
Use
Microphone, please.
Use the microphone.
Yeah, please step the microphone too. Not a problem.
I contacted Kristen Haar, the compliance officer for the DOT. That was the lady that was at the meeting that we were all at.
Yeah.
And I asked her pointedly the question, does the city council have the authority to shut down Ottumwa Transit and give it to 1015? The answer I got back was that the DOT will make the determination of who takes over Ottumwa Transit. Now, given if there's just myself and 1015, it's going to go to 1015. But adding more entities will actually take the choice away from the city council. If you have any questions about those facts that I've stated, her name's Kristen Haar, H-A-A-R. She's a compliance officer for the DOT. And if this continues on with more people with quotes, I think it would behoove someone from the council to contact Kristen, because the DOT does have a heavy hand in this. So I thought that might help the situation.
Thanks, Dave, for that information. Go ahead.
Mayor Delby, I want to clarify, this afternoon at about 4:30, I did receive an email from Jason Knoll, who is the manager of Durham Bus Company here in town. So that was after a long day of budgets. I have not read it in detail, but what Mr. Lapointe shared is the substance of the letter that I received. So I'll make that available to the council if we want to pursue that.
Sure. Okay. Oh, yes, Mr. J.
Just so you know, Kristen is going to be out for the next 2 weeks on medical, but to get a hold of her, just know it's going to be a couple weeks before she probably responds back.
Okay. All right. Duly noted. Sounds good. All right. We move on to number 3.
Staff recommendation to City Council for action on the above offer at the regular City Council meeting on January 21st, 2020.
Okay. And did you need another comment there?
I will consult with City Attorney Joni Keith when she returns next week. And I will also talk to somebody at DOT so I can give you some kind of a synopsis after tonight's meeting.
Good deal.
Jeremy Johnson. Yes, they're very short staffed, but Jeremy would definitely be the guy you want to talk to. Jeremy Johnson Miller.
I have his name and number here on the letter.
He's the one that actually oversees both Jay and myself.
Okay. Jeremy Johnson. Okay. Moving on. This is part of the meeting where the public is invited to address the council on an item that is not on the agenda. So if there are those in the crowd who wishes to address an item not on the agenda, now is your time to step forward. Yes, sir. Please step forward, state your name and address. You have 3 minutes to address the council on an item not on the agenda.
No, it's not on the agenda.
Right.
My name is Terry Bradley. I'm the Director of Wapello County Veteran Affairs again.
Sure.
I would like the City Council to consider a liaison with my office, one council member. I have a County Board of Supervisor who is a liaison in my office, and I think it would behoove the council to have a liaison with my office. That way you know what's going on with your veteran population. Thank you.
You bet. Absolutely. Good idea. Yes.
Somewhat related, but not to Terry's comment. I wanted to inform the public that as of last night, we had 3 candidates for the city administrator position. This morning, I received a letter from one of the candidates who withdrew his name. So we have now 2 candidates who are interested in the position of city administrator. And our plan at this point, as it has been all along, is that we would have a social meet and greet on Friday, the 24th of January at Bridgeview Center. And we'll make the media aware of that time and place again. And then on Saturday morning, the 25th, the council, a public group, and the city department heads and supervisors would meet with the candidates and see what their favor is in terms of whether they offer the position. So 24th and 25th, we'll have at least 2 people here for interviews.
Okay, last call for anybody wishing to address the council on an item not on the agenda. Okay, again, thank you to Mr. Silverio, Mary Kirk from Ottumwa Transit, Mr. Jay Allison and his staff at 10:15, and all those who spoke this evening. Thank you very much for attending. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, take the roll, please, Chris.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes. Good evening. It's 6:49.